feel free to connect to us anytime. We are very happy to give you more information. So with this, let's transition to our one speaker, Craig Newmark. And I'll pull out there. This is the first one. Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you, Tanya. Okay, so Craig Newmark really needs no introduction, but in going over his background this morning, I discovered a few facts which I thought I would share with you. Craig described himself as an OG-style nerd and customer service rep. He was born in Morristown, New Jersey, so for our friends on the East Coast, we like to tout that they're really creative and wonderful people who come from New Jersey. I'm another one. Craig received his bachelor's and his master's degree in computer science from Case Western Reserve. He is, of course, a web pioneer, a speaker, a philanthropist, and an advocate of the use of technology for the public good. Craig, as we all know, is the founder of Craigslist, started in 1995, and which is now one of the world's most visited websites. He has continued to work with Craigslist as a customer service representative for almost 20 years. But today his main focus is Craig Connects, which he launched in March of 2011. And the mission of Craig's Connects in the short term is to promote and enhance the use of technology and social media to benefit philanthropy and public service. He uses Craig Connects, the Craig Connects platform, to support effective organizations working for veterans and military families, open government, public diplomacy, journalistic ethics and accountability, fact-checking, consumer protection, election protection, and voter registration. Craig serves on the Board of Overseers of the Columbia Journalism Review, the Board of Directors of the Center for Public Integrity, the Sunlight Foundation, Consumers Union Consumer Reports, and Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. He's on advisory boards to more than a dozen renowned nonprofit organizations and is a strong supporter of efforts to develop new ethical standards and practices for journalism in the digital world, which is the subject of our talk, of this talk today. So please join me in welcoming Mark.
Folks, I am Dilbert. Scott was kind enough to draw this real-life picture. Unfortunately, he captured my true body shape as well, which is distressing. But that's really me there. But the big theme here is that I'm a news consumer. I am not a news professional, and I'm going to respect those boundaries. I'm viewing things from the outside, trying to, pioneer from this news consumer perspective issues which do matter to people who feel strongly about the importance of the news. I really am a nerd. Growing up through the Eisenhower administration, so it's been like 60 years. I'm not like one of these new nerds who knows something about media science fiction. I was one of those guys who had a really bad time in high school, and now when I read about how nerd is chic right now, I try not to become bitter. But regarding promoting the news and its importance, I feel like I'm the pointy end of the spear. I'm the only one I know about, and this is a really uncomfortable position. I don't want to be in this position, but a nerd's got to do what a nerd's got to do. Here, I'm going to be, I generally defer to professionals, and I'm going to look to professionals for how to fix the news. I have no idea how to fix the news. The really hard part, which I know very little about, for example, has to do with business models for the news. Here's my favorite quote, modified with the addition of one word. This is something I kind of learned in Mr. Shulsky's history class in 1970. That is, we just rely on the press for the survival of our democracy. I mean, this is true across the whole species, the whole planet. But that's what I learned, well, like 40 years ago. And that's a really big deal. James Fallows captured me blurting this out a few years ago, but he was more interested that my sense of humor was that of Bob Newhart, so he did declare me the Bob Newhart of the internet, which is better than being the Forrest Gump of the internet. So the press is so important in terms of what it needs to do, but me, I'm just looking at things. And I elaborated this on the paper I've written, which we'll publish probably tomorrow, but you know, in 2006, 2007, the press was telling us that financial system's in great shape, but people like Dean Starkman was posting on Columbia Journalism Review things like saying, hey, things are actually really, really shaky. He wasn't the only one. He's published a book right now on this, and you know, there's been a lot of human suffering across the world because we weren't alerted to the problems in the financial system, and things went south, and a lot of people got hurt. Now I read that not much has changed in the financial system. The protections that we need aren't there, and as a result, things may go south again. The IRS scandal, if you look at crew.org, you'll find that what was reported throughout the press is the opposite of what the real scandal is, which is to say that the IRS should have gone after a lot more organizations who are actually violating IRS rules. $6 billion gone missing in Iraq. As oddly enough, Vanity Fair did this article, and they swear they thoroughly fact-checked it. And the deal there is that $6 billion were sent to Iraq in cash with no oversight, which sounds like it's the plot of Ocean's 15, but it happened. One of the most trusted newsmen in the country, Jon Stewart, a few years ago, had this piece, CNN Leaves It There, which showed that TV news organizations would show a politician lying where the lie was already pretty thoroughly debunked, and the reporter knew it was a lie, and visibly reacted that way, and then said, but we got to leave it there. And the video is still up. John is continuing to do good work. And now there's articles like in today's Time magazine online, there's the article saying that John Oliver is a reporter and doing a more professional job than many and funnier, which works for me. These days, if you look at Twitter, you'll see a lot of net neutrality astroturfing, which is not being covered in the press. And this is actually a really big issue. And then regarding Obamacare, most people in the country don't know what Obamacare is. They're against it, except when they're told what it is. And these are not good things. And this lack of reporting, well, it winds up causing human suffering. This is the situation as people generally perceive it right now. For people who are having a hard time reading it, Abe Lincoln is pointing out that a problem with quotes on the internet is you can never be sure that they're authentic. And Abe is still doing a lot of good work for the country. Now I start to refer to even more people who are much smarter than I am in this matter. Here's Dana Boyd, which is one of the people doing fact-based reporting on the areas of her interests, like the safety of children. She was reporting on the tendency of people to fake studies and then for reporters to report on the studies without looking at them, which I've seen a number of times in related areas. Dana is much braver than I am, and much more eloquent than I am, and much braver than I am, so she says things much better. This was out of Medium, and I may, as an experiment, publish this paper in Medium as well as my own blog. But the idea she has a point here, reinforced by an actual quote from Winston Churchill. It was a bad problem in his time. It's a much worse problem in our time. In response to Dana's rhetorical question, until some brief number of years ago, the message in newsrooms was get it right. You know, sure, sometimes people got it wrong, Sometimes people went into very gray areas, but the expectation, the social norm, was get it right. Now it's different, as we see illustrated in popular culture, and again, that's a reference to the American version of House of Cards. I recommend the British version of House of Cards also for those of you who are Netflix fans. And it's a bad series to be a journalist in. Now, I've worked with, in the last 10 years, maybe with hundreds of journalists. Most do great. I fear that I'm painting too pessimistic a picture. Most people have good intentions, and they will perform really well under really intense pressure. I talk to people who their main venue is online, and they've got to put up maybe 5 stories a day, and their editors have told them, well, if they get something wrong, maybe they'll fix it later. But by then, the lie has spread around the world. That's not good. The message is plausibility is more important than being accountable for what you've done. Folks like Jay Rosen, I think it's Jay, talk about stenography as journalism. What you do is you accept what's received wisdom, conventional wisdom, you write that. The problem is that sometimes conventional wisdom or received wisdom is wrong. The stability of the financial system is one of those. And you may recall this kerfuffle about weapons of mass destruction that happened around 10 years ago. The deal is that there's not that checking. And again, this problem of what John calls CNN leaves it there. Because if you look at TV news pretty much every day, especially in election season, you will see politicians doing what you know is lying. And, reporters are smart. They know they're being lied to, but they don't act on it. And, it doesn't take much to lose that sense of trustworthiness and perceived trust, which is the situation we're in now. It may just take one bad reporter to taint an entire news outlet, like maybe Jason Blair. The New Hope, and as a nerd, I felt committed to insert a Star Wars joke. But the really tough guys are the people building these ethics codes. The Society of Professional Journalists, I think it was about 6 weeks ago, put up a really strict ethics code. The Online News Association, while they're tough guys, and I'm not very tough in comparison, although I'm sure I radiate menace, but they put together a do-it-yourself news ethics kit, and both efforts are really impressive. Both are really tough. But as a customer service rep, I see people who, we help put food on the table or get a place to live every day. So I'm sympathetic to people in, let's say, all jobs, the people who just have to grind things out every day. So I'm okay if just someone's showing good faith in the news that they do. I'm happy if they, do some due diligence, good faith fact-checking. Maybe they can't do it as thoroughly as they'd like to. But with that, I want to see some accountability. Because if you do this limited good faith fact-checking, you are going to get something wrong. You're going to do damage. You're going to do harm. And then you got to make it up. And that may mean going to places which repeated the lie and letting them know that and doing what you can to fix that. And here was even newer, hopier stuff that I didn't know until 2 weeks ago or so that I stumbled across, I think, on Medium, which I'm getting a lot of respect for. That is, I'm feeling a lot more respect for the thing. There's this thing at Santa Clara University, down the street a little, where they're taking a look at these issues in the Trust Project. Now, this is something that Santa Clara University is doing, along with Richard Gingrich from Google News. The deal is this is not a Google effort, and Google's not going to be telling anyone what the news is, but they seriously believe in the don't be evil thing. I've dug into this a lot. even when I disagree with him. Like Nexus 6 orders. But if you were a nerd, that would be very funny, by the way. What's better is that Jeff Jarvis wrote a follow-on piece, a response to the Markla article, and his idea, and again, Jeff is a lot braver than I am too. Used to see him asking awkward questions of people, like of big media moguls. That's a lot of fun to watch, especially since it's not me asking those questions. And that's entirely serious. He's thinking that Google News should detect the signals of trustworthiness, whatever those are, and rank those stories higher than other articles. For example, you know, if a news outlet or a journalist has a published code of ethics and accountability, a code of trustworthy behavior, that should give them a little boost higher. If they post all their sources and if they did the original research, those are signals, perhaps, which can get the article ranked higher. Jeff's suggestion is that let's not think about the stick, let's give people a carrot. That is, if you do good work, original work, if you do due diligence and all that, rate those articles higher. Intuitively, speaking as a news consumer, that works for me. A suggestion of mine that I snuck in there, because I don't know how to use Google Slides very well, is just the idea that if it's an opinion piece, label that as such. That's called for in many codes of ethics, but people fail to do that, so that you'll see an opinion piece which, you know, the opinion piece which looks like a fact piece is asserting opinions as fact. And, you know, that's not what I call due diligence. So the deal is that we do have serious movement here in this whole environment by professionals. Me, you know, I'm mostly in this regard, I'm a cheerleader, certainly an unattractive image at my age. But again, I'm just a news consumer. And again, I just want news I can trust. I'm uncomfortable, again, in this role as news consumer, being the pointy end of the spear. As it turns out, that person might be Sally. And the idea is that what I think we need are ideas from people who are professionals in these fields, combining knowledge of journalism, professional knowledge of journalism, along with the technology involved to detect these signals, and then to figure out what something like Google News can do to rank the good stuff higher. I fear I'm making this sound a lot easier than it is. It's not easy, it's controversial, but it's the best we have, and remember that a trustworthy press is the immune system of democracy. We really needed it over the past few months. We didn't have it. And now I turn things over to Anne. Thanks, folks.
Don't go away. So I'm just going to kind of frame an opening question, a big question, to Craig, and then, as he said, what we'd like to do is solicit some feedback from you, and obviously you have questions, and the folks in New York have questions, so we'll be asking those as well. But following up on the conversation that was held a couple of weeks ago, there was a news roundtable at the Markla Center that was quite interesting, that brought together technologists and journalists to examine some of the issues that Craig has raised today. And we kind of tossed around a lot of ideas, but really we're basically asking the question, and Sally was leading this group. Thank you, Sally. You know, when he talks about signals, what he means is, how can news organizations, in this plethora of, you know, cacophonous noise out there, what kinds of signals can we create as journalists or as publishers to convey to users and readers that the news is trustworthy? And some of the ideas that we batted about were posting a mission statement and an ethics policy, as Craig has mentioned, online, where people can become familiar with that. signaling, creating some sort of a signal, whatever that means, and we can talk about that, to give more transparency to the reporter. Who is the reporter? Why are they experts? What are their backgrounds? Do they have conflicts of interest in certain areas? Are there ways to show how the sausage gets made? There's a lot of mistrust in the press. A recent Pew study showed that 55% of the American public does not trust what they read or consume or see. And so describing, what kind of signals could be created or what kind of technology could we use to describe the editing process? Are there ways that Wikipedia-style citation systems could be better used to correct the record? Are there ways to have reporters describe the methodology behind the stories that they have written? Some of these stories are derivative, but some of them are very deeply reported. The public really can't tell the difference. Are there ways for us to use tools such as checklists, metadata, and existing content management systems to enhance and make these processes more transparent? And can we use algorithms and recommendation systems more efficiently to bring trustworthy news, as Craig has suggested, to the top, so that people can understand that technology is sort of working on the side of democracy and a free press. So those are just some of the ideas that we came. So we talked about, signal. Is it a good housekeeping stamp of approval? I mean, what could that be? Any other thoughts you'd like to?
The deal is this is a slippery slope here because we're talking about trust and who can you trust. And in cases where there's a lot of news outlets where there are reporters who are pretty scrupulous about things, and then there's reporters who are not so scrupulous, but they're good at doing plausible stuff. So the hard part is the accountability measure. That is, if a story gets it wrong, can someone correct it in a way that doesn't get the editor all defensive, and so that they quietly go ahead and correct the story in a manner as respectful as possible to everyone. Now, frankly, I don't see that very often, and I'm thinking of this in the context of the Churchillian quote. If a reporter gets something wrong, and if that is spread and been broadcast, let's say, through a wire service or whatever, are they going to go through and do the good thing? Because again, like Dana's first rule, do no harm. So that's something which we could look for from folks. Are they not only going to fact check and so on, but will they make wrong stuff right?
I have a question or an observation. Denmark is one of the least corrupt governments on the planet. I'm just curious if anybody looked at comparative democracy, who's doing the best job on the planet as far as news organizations, journalism? What can we learn from them, even just to catch up to the ground to Sweden, to Switzerland? Do we know that yet?
I haven't looked overseas, except the UK a bit, where I've observed the Leveson study and that kind of thing, where it appears that conditions in the UK are worse, which is ironic since it's so easy to sue people for defamation in the UK. The situation, I'm more focused on what's here and people who are doing a great job here. For example, there's the New Yorkers doing a really good job. And I even cornered Canaletta a couple weeks ago in New York about that. The folks at ProPublica are really good, and I've learned a lot from Dick Toffel. In this area, I've wound up chatting with the folks at Mother Jones, which is actually much more in the political center than people think, and they're pretty scrupulous. So there's hope here. People are doing good jobs, and that leads me to the idea that you reward folks by, just positive stuff. That's why I like Jeff's suggestion of ranking the good stuff higher in Google News searches, that might make a difference. So again, the ideal is, speaking as a news consumer, rank the good stuff higher. And it occurs to me, I'm not much of a businessman, but if you get that good reputation through actual practice, that gives you, whether you're a journalist or a news outlet, that's a competitive advantage.
Kelly?
I'm interested in the idea of accountability. I think that's so important. And I just wanted to ask you, as a news consumer, how would you like to see that play out besides corrections? I mean, corrections are the assumed basic rung, but what more needs to be done, or how's a better way to do it? So,
I wish Craig Silverman was here so we could ask him.
yeah.
And then tomorrow I'll be apologizing to him for not sending this stuff to him early. But what I'd like to see is that some, again, quiet mechanisms where you can inform an editor something went badly wrong, where the editor, if it's discreet, the editor will feel less of a tendency to be defensive. And then what they would do is see that it was wrong and give people a break, because presumably the reporter did some due diligence and just missed something. And then the hard part would be to articulate the correction as prominently as the original piece while not reinforcing the lie, because you got to be careful there. You know, everyone has probably seen recent studies which show if you correct something but in a way that repeats the disinformation, you make it worse. Remember, do no harm. So you correct it, and then I'm afraid the painful part would be to go to all the other news outlets repeating the misinformation and asking them to get it right. Of course, that would also be a measure of their trustworthiness.
What do you think? What is the potential of crowdsourced fact-checking, like what the Truth Squad does at Pointer?
I love the idea of crowdsourced fact-checking, but I've seen in operation there are highly paid groups who are real professionals at disinformation and at screwing this kind of thing up. So I'm pessimistic. I will be optimistic when we have good forms of authentication online, but that's something I've been waiting for 20 years, and I think we'll be waiting for more years. Tangential to say that after I publish this, I'm hoping to engage everyone here and listening in all this stuff, because my intention would be to try to find a way to get all these things, get good ideas, get real stuff, and then give it to Sally to move forward. I'm a participant, and I have some good ideas, but again, forgive me for the unpleasant imagery, but I may be mostly a cheerleader. And again, that's the most revolting thing I'll say today.
We have, hang on, Dan, 1 second. We have a question from New York. It seems you put faith in Google and their news algorithm, yet for this to work, doesn't their algorithm need to be open?
For this to work, Google's algorithm would need to be able to detect signals of trustworthiness, whatever they are, and to rank them more highly. I do trust the Google guys, having spoken to them and so on, even disagreeing with some of their decisions, like the way they launched the Nexus 6 phone. Look it up, you'll see what I mean. But the deal is that I don't think they need to open up the algorithm, but I think they do need to articulate what the signals are. And again, to encourage that kind of good behavior, I think we'll see news outlets adhere to that stuff, because again, it gives them a competitive advantage, because the people may not expect celebrity gossip to be trustworthy, but I think people hope that actual news be trustworthy.
Dan?
Part of it, the problem seems to be just kind of a philosophy of what truth is, and I mean, I don't really want to get into that rabbit hole, but I was curious about something that you were working on recently, where you were embedded with the Veterans Affairs Department. And I think I read this from your blog, but you felt like they were being given unfair coverage, or the great things that they were doing weren't getting the same kind of coverage as some of the bad things that reporters typically report on. So I was wondering if during that time that you were embedded with the VA, if that changed how you felt about like trust, like what is trust or what is truth in reporting and in coverage and whatnot.
Okay. The question of what is truth, I defer to humans who must be much smarter than I am. The trust is detected through tests of it. For example, the VA had a problem with the backlog of medical claims, which is different than the appeals backlog. They're related, but they're different. I don't think I saw any articles which got that distinction right, which is major. None of the reporting on this noted that Shinseki, taking a much more realistic view of the medical conditions of veterans, he measured claims backlog much more harshly than his predecessors. And then he actually did something about it, not mentioning publicly that that had been an area which had been neglected for 8 years prior to his tenure. He was a good soldier in that regards. Thing is, this was pretty well known in Washington, and yet none of the reporting on this situation, except for me, brought it out. The VA scandal about long waiting lists, that situation was created in 2002 with the delivery of lousy software. And then nothing was done about that until the last few years. People, I don't know if it's a matter of not having good sources, but folks, if I have better sources, that's like one of the signs of the apocalypse, because these stories are not secrets. They're fairly well known in Washington, and yet no one's reporting them except for me. And I'm not a reporter. I'll try to do my little thing. I do some half-assed writing, if I may be generous to myself. And then again, I'll try to be funny because I can't help myself, even though I know I'm not as funny as I think I am. But I try to get the word out there where I know stuff, have some modest success, but it's only very modest. Did that answer the full question?
Well, those are big questions. I didn't expect you to answer all of it, but no, thank you.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of it, and it's frustrating in that a lot of good people do a lot of good work in the world, particularly the well over 300,000 people in the Department of Veterans Affairs who do a good job under nasty conditions every day, and when they're all painted as being involved in a scandal, that pisses me off, because I want to treat people like I want to be treated, and that didn't happen.
Okay, we have a follow-up from New York, follow-up question from New York. This refers to the Google algorithm, which is, don't we need access to the code to keep them accountable? Who holds them accountable if it's in a black box?
I don't know. My bias is towards open source so that people can look at things, and that's personally my bias. But, I'm not on the Google board of directors or anything like that, and they need to maintain a competitive advantage that way. However, if we do implement the scheme wherein, publicly understood signals meant that more trustworthy articles were ranked higher, we could actually test that. We could look at what we know were more trustworthy articles based on original sources with fact-checking and do that reality test. And if it's not working out that way, then what happens is that Sally gives Richard a call. Of course, but again, it's not a Google project we're talking about. This is just something people are doing for fun. I'm supposed to say that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think along the lines of the Google goals, I think since Google is not the only search engine out there, I think it's important for these big tech companies to have communications with each other in such a way that they can collectively develop algorithms that would make all these check and balances in place. And I don't know exactly how that would happen, because I think every tech companies have their own, like, they want to like be the #1 search engine as a result of that, like, balancing their desire to, like, make profit and also holding journalism to high ethical standards.
I like the idea that all search engines would participate in this. I figure we got to start somewhere, and Google has shown a very positive, proactive attitude, or I should say, people doing their own thing at Google have started off with a positive, proactive thing. And the progress on that will be unknown to us because it will be back channel. It'll be people talking to each other, telling each other, let's do a better job, and let's try to sneak it by our bosses or things like that. So one thing at a time. This is not low-hanging fruit, but it's the lowest hanging fruit that I've seen anywhere, which is why I am giving special props to the Marcula project and to the personal participation of other folks. And that's a really big deal because, I thought if I suggested this kind of thing, no one would care. And it was a really great surprise to see the article in Medium pop up on the Trust Project, and then Jeff Jarvis publishing something about that, enhancements, in his Wither journalism vertical on Medium, which is in addition to his Buzz Machine site.
I'm also a nerd from Morristown, New Jersey. I grew up in the Eisenhower orientation.
Oh.
I've been a CEO of a public company and a student here at Stanford. I spent the last several years traveling with people who meditate, fast, eat raw food, spend time in the jungle with shamans. And in order to do that, I've had to kind of suspend disbelief a little bit. They have sources of news too, and often those sources are kind of biased, have a different view of reality, don't have controlled studies and whatever. But I find a lot of value there, and somehow people are pretty sophisticated in their way at separating truth from fiction. So I guess the question is, like, if we were to set up sort of some absolute criteria for reliable articles, how do the unreliable articles get there too? Because they do have some value.
Well, you're right. We not only need to see unreliable articles, but we need to see articles which disagree with our own points of view. Those are both kind of related problems, and I don't have even the beginning of answers for you, not really. I'm just trying to help other people solve this big problem. The unreliable stuff, the celebrity gossip will always have a place, I think, and it will always pop up, especially as advertising networks develop. I just want to focus on this one big thing by helping smart people solve it. And then I will use my whatever social networks I have to promote the work of people doing good work. If you look at the things I post in general, you'll see that for the most part, I'm either posting stuff which promotes the work of other good people, or I'm posting my bird photos, although by birds I also include raccoons, and don't forget Ratty the roof rat, or I'm trying to be funny, and I'd like to apologize for the latter.
Let's hear some more thoughts from you folks on what kind of signals, as consumers, you're all news consumers, what would you find valuable? What is it that you want to see or you're not seeing from, those of us who have worked in the news business for a long time think we do many of these, we take care of business inside our own shops. We have a very elaborate editing system. We know how we think that we fairly and objectively make the sausage, as we call it. But what would be useful to you, and what technologies do you see out there that you think could be put to better use to this effect?
I would like to see less fairy tales. Around here, in the libraries, children in strollers are brought in many mornings, and they start them off on fairy tales. I want them to get real to start with. They want to make things look great. By the time they're adults, They want to be entertained, and they want to hear things that confirm the beliefs they picked up as children.
This is way outside of my expertise, but it just, first, Dana Boyd, who I said it earlier, is again pretty much the expert in protecting children online, and she would be a good source of expertise. Beyond that, intuitively, I love the idea of Jon Stewart, Stephen Colbert, and John Oliver doing news stories, news fables for children. That would be pretty good, and I haven't read Stephen's books for kids, but I have a feeling he's already started. The deal is that I'm committed to this, and although I keep pointing over to Sally, the idea is that what I'm proposing, when I'm pushing, my role is pretty half-assed. Because again, I'm not in the field, I'm going to respect that boundary. But this may be the last best chance we have for the kind of journalism that is the immune system of democracy.
So we only have time for one more question. I'll take this last one from New York. Basically, what services do you find trustworthy? And of the things that we've discussed here, if you could construct your trustworthiest news feed, what would be in that?
Well, first, I'm going to accidentally leave off some of the sources that I trust, so I'm apologizing in advance. And I'm starting with New York because that's kind of a center of the news industry. So there's ProPublica, New Yorker, and Huffington Post, because I've actually spoken with them about some of their qualification stuff. I have no objection to serious news stories and celebrity gossip being put together, even though Mrs. Newmark kind of hates that kind of thing. I like what I'm seeing from The Guardian, and again, there's Mother Jones and others. A problem is that there's some news outlets that I want to love, but sometimes I see stories published in my areas of expertise, like the internet industry, or to a lesser extent, politics. I see sometimes lapses that wherein the stories are plausible, but I'm deep in the industry and I know, that's not so good. So again, ProPublica in particular is really good. There's also the journalism done by Center for Public Integrity, and obviously I have a conflict of interest. I'm on that board. But they do some great reporting, but they're not really a news outlet. Their reporting is expected to be caught by others. Same thing with Sunlight Foundation. They do that kind of thing. They're more in the tools business, and I'm on that board, so note my possible conflict of interest. And I apologize to whoever I've stupidly forgotten.
Okay, I think that brings us to our time limit. So please join me in thanking Craig. Hello to New York. Thank you for your questions. And we'll get your information and let you know about our next brown bag lunch next quarter. So thanks everybody for coming. Thank you.
He says the computer you plan on using for Skype isn't
Do you
working.
happen to have a USB?
Sorry?
Do you happen to have a USB stick that would be working?
No.
It's the one that I have.
I intend not to use them,
Yeah.
just to get my wife's photos off my computer.
No, I just emailed it.
Yes. No, that's right.